King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Thanks for being here on the Broadcasters Podcast. This is episode 165. It was 52 podcasts ago of this program where we, on this program, started talking about the coronavirus and COVID-19. And people are now reflecting back on 1 year ago of live crowds going to sporting events and music events, concerts, festivals, anything. A year ago, that production for many different projects, movies, television, all of that changed. Locking down, stopping the spread, all of that came up. We're all in this together, all encompassed in a short amount of time 1 year ago. It feels like it's been forever. And I remember for myself, I was doing quite a bit of the programming when I was doing my podcasts and all, and I was, out and about, going to the office. But actually, at this point, I'd already stayed home for about a month because I was just waiting what was going to happen. It was just like we were all kind of didn't know where things were going to be. A lot of uncertainty. We know where we are now, a year later, but what happened was the way we look at media, the way we have our entertainment has ultimately changed. A true tectonic type of change. A lot of setting of trends, a lot of changes coming about, namely the ultimate digital disruption, which has been ongoing since the advent of the internet and now more than ever because of the fact that in the age of smartphones and other things, we are able to go and connect so easily on so many smart devices now with televisions so accessible, with our phones easily able to go and play video, audio, whatever we want and whatever we need with about as much data as necessary. We are spoiled. And the other thing we have too is the way we can consume media has ultimately changed too. But what happened is, in this last year, what was eventually going to happen in a couple of years accelerated and escalated at an exponential rate. We're now at the point where the pandemic has created and permutated, I was looking for some alliteration, there you go, permutated the way media is because of the fact that overnight streaming media became the priority for every major corporate media outlet and for every grassroots media outlet, for every content creator, big or small, no matter what resources you have. And the old traditional models of movies, of music, of television, and ultimately of radio, they have all changed. And at this point, we don't have a lot of things that have already started to come back. Only now are we going to see a possibility that the movie industry will start to get back to where it was. It's not going to get back to where it was right away. We already know that. Broadway is still shut down. So the theater industry, the arts, concerts, the music industry in general, that is still shut down for the most part. I mean, there are some cities and some states that you can have that, and some areas of the world that do have some opening. But again, it's still not the same. I mean, what we were accustomed to for entertainment has changed. What has happened is the likes of Netflix, which a year ago, I didn't know if they were going to be able to survive the onslaught of all the things that we're doing with their platform and the incredible amount of money they were spending on what they were doing. And they were able to go ahead and say, man, this pandemic helped Netflix the most. They helped Amazon the most. And other major media outlets and other major big corporations in some cases that are made for this. In media, it's ultimately changed. Now, I knew it was going to happen. Like, you can see it happening. Everything from the digital disruption has changed a lot of things. Music it took a good gradual decline to see CDs and to see physical units going away. They're next to extinct, except for some vinyl sales. But again, physical units sold? No. When you could download everything, that's where we are. I mean, the significance of that for myself is all the physical units of music I have, I sold them at a garage sale. That's it. Done. And as for movies, I don't hold any of them on DVD or VHS or anything like that. Those are gone too. When I can stream everything, I can find it all online. But what happened with music is, we had the physical units going away. But now the concerts, the physical interaction that artists and musicians had with their fans has been very little at best. Right now, it's all virtual, unless they don't know what they're doing to be able to go ahead and go into the new medium, well, to them a new medium, and be able to go ahead and continue to interact and be able to engage with their fans. It's a different way now. Without that personal interaction, the on-the-road grind. Same thing going for, celebrities. I mean, celebrities, I think, are the biggest casualty of the pandemic in the media. Celebrities have been exposed. They are now, they are out of touch, insignificant people. They're has-beens now, many of them, except for the ones that still have, projects. Because again, most actors and actresses, they're only as important as, the fact that they're working. But these were all celebrities for the most part. Many of them, they were not working. Now, some of them might have finished working on projects, and those projects were in the queue to be released, and they would have to be doing promo appearances and things like that. But otherwise, they weren't working on other projects. They're basically unemployed. And they're not doing anything that we care about. And them living their lap of luxury at home in their nice, cushy, $1 million mansions, maybe going on a Zoom call with bad audio and bad video, looking haggard because they're not dressed up, dolled up, made up to be looking great on camera onto a TV show. And the celebrities that used to drive the vehicles of a late night show or talk shows or the celebrity gossip stuff, gone. Probably for the better, in my opinion, because they're still famous people. But those that we look at as famous people now are not being designed and created by the corporate types, these big major companies and agencies that are able to go and control, and they are the ones that determine who becomes the stars. Now we do. The control's back to the people. If you're looking online, digitally, all the agencies, managers, PR people, they're going towards influencers. Those that are able to influence online, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, that's what they're doing right now. We've talked about the influencers over a couple weeks here on the program. That's what happened here. So we reflected on the ultimate change in 1 year where celebrities have become extinct. They're not the new thing anymore. They are passé. That's what they've become. That's what overall has happened with this industry in general. And so many things have happened here. And because of the media and because of the way things were and being handled, the fear-mongering that was done, and also some of the ignorance and stubbornness and the imbecility of federal and state governments throughout. Let's just be honest. The fact that everything had to get locked down. I mean, that's the one thing that was really. I can't rule out if this was not an overstep. Now, in terms of everybody trying to get themselves to a point where everybody could be saved from spreading the virus and for people to be staying healthy. So staying in your homes, making sure that if you were sick, to not try to spread out. And then some of the things were being done, again, the measures that we have. Sanitary, mask coverings, things like that. Got it. With all that there. But then the locking down and letting businesses just suffer and letting everything suffer and saying that, okay, if something like this happens, the only thing the media could do and everybody else and all these government officials that we rely upon, that we vote in for the most part, they did a horrible job in informing the public, did a horrible job to scare, intimidate, anger, and really just in like a narcissistic kind of feel, control and dominate the public and scare the shit out of them, which is what they did. They helped to, honestly, they helped to feed the frenzy. That's what they did. So journalism, I can't talk about anymore. That's one thing. I would talk about the media in some cases here and there, but the truth is, journalism is ultimately dead. Like celebrities, journalism is archaic. It's out of style. Is antiquated. Celebrities are antiquated. The pandemic created this. And you know what? Corporations and people and politicians and civic leaders and other people could have handled this better. Collectively could have handled this better, but they didn't. So with some of these changes, I'm sure Hollywood wishes that not everything got shut down completely. But of course, they're in the mode that they have to feel like, hey, we have to go ahead and, we have to play up our social scale. We have to be cognizant. We have to look like we care about these people, which we really don't. And we've talked about that. And so here we are, 1 year later, and now we want to go ahead and look back and just truly see the changes that have been made. Like I could go back to past episodes and look at what has changed since and how everything for the pandemic affected. Now, for me, I increased the amount of content I've ever done. Like I do more than I ever did. Like I have my When I'm Not Podcasting series, which was just kind of like a random episode here and there. I would do it like, maybe like 1 or 2 episodes a week or, at the most. And now I do every other day. And I'm consistent on it because it's doing pretty well. Getting an audience there. I'm pretty happy about that. Other than that, the Broadcasters Podcast, I was doing remember, I put it like this. I did so many interviews in a short amount of time last March because I had time. I was sitting at home and not going out for over a month, 2 months actually. And I did so many damn interviews as a result. Crazy. And I only started finishing up the interviews that I had done from last year to this, 2 weeks ago. That's how much I did. Like I did a whole lot of interviews and I ran them all through. And I was great. I really appreciate them. And by the way, all those full-length interviews now are on the YouTube page, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. So if you look at the Broadcasters Podcast section, you will find full-length interviews, commercial-free, of all the guests I've had on this program in the last 2 years. So you can look for that there. And they're in video format as well. So you can actually see the guests with me in the Zoom calls. We did that. Now, let's get into the actual point of where we are. For me, I really do feel like, again, I'm glass half full, and I feel good about a lot of things that have happened where people have actually handled the situation with grace and persistence and with forward thinking. Because honestly, technology has helped us get through all of this. Let's just be honest about it. And Digiday is the first place I'm going to go. They put an article out about how the pandemic did and didn't change the media industry. So this is an overall factor of where we are. And I think it's very important that all this gets pointed across. So key hits that are made about all what happened. Media companies' advertising revenues had rebounded by the end of last year. Pandemic's impact on companies' event and subscription businesses may not last, for better or for worse. And media businesses have been greatly impacted in the last year by issues like the outcry over racial inequality and tracking crackdowns from Google and Apple than by the pandemic. So there's that part. So we've had many companies now shifting to remote work. And now we're starting to hear that some studios are starting to have people come back to the office. So there's going to be a reinstituting of people getting back into the office atmosphere once again. But there's many that have gotten to the shift to remote work. Plus the cost cutting many media companies underwent to weather the economic downturn are likely to have some lasting impacts, as well as the fluidity of the advertising market. With advertising, which is where many of these companies do need this kind of revenue coming in to help them out, they're losing that. They're trying to support with subscriptions now in their streaming platforms, in their proprietary streaming platforms. And that was a change that they're talking about, the change for media companies to make cost-cutting measures, to make layoffs, and then ultimately micromanaging some of their divisions because they needed to put more resources into streaming, into their digital content, and the traditional content took a hit. Because digital became priority. It's become priority for most every major media company now. That's where we are. Companies are still determining to what extent they will continue to work remotely once it is safe to return to the office at normal capacity. They're sorting out the permanence of the expenses that evaporated in 2020. Whether companies will return to offices will inform whether their real estate and electricity costs return. Business travel is another line item to which many companies need to take a red pen, not only because it lowers costs, but it streamlines employee work hours. We haven't even gotten back to full-scale business travel yet. We don't even have conventions yet. We have nothing large-scale yet anywhere. If there is, it's very, very few and rare in between. A media executive actually mentioning the fact that, quote, there are so many things we do that take an astronomical amount of time, like traveling to the West Coast for a meeting. So much can be done via Zoom. And then also, finally, they're getting their arms around whether the shortened pitch cycles for advertising deals as well as advertisers' focus on tried and true ad formats, i.e. units that can be delivered via an ad server versus custom-built branded content, will continue to trend in the travel and theatrical sectors return to market, and third-party cookie ultimately goes away. Media executives said all the events in the last year will have more of an long-standing impact on the industry. Now, they talk about the local news business, that no segment was hit harder than the already struggling local news ecosystem. Several recently released reports and initiatives highlight the exact impact on the local news industry. The Knight Foundation reported on March 3rd this year, arguing measuring the health of a news environment should include assessment of the diversity of models of how newsrooms reflect the communities they cover. Okay, they're talking about that. The Toe Center for Digital Journalism and the Columbia Journalism Review hit the one-year mark of tracking newsroom cutbacks in the wake of the pandemic. One of the key takeaways is that media companies suffered from declines in ad revenue and significant layoffs across the board. The newspapers were hit the hardest. More than 60 outlets have shut down, including 56 newspapers, 5 magazines, 3 digital outlets, and 1 radio station. I wanted to just bring a few things up in that story because it really does tell you a lot of what's going on, because advertising is what fuels the funnel of money into these companies when they can't expect when they're behind on subscriptions and trying to get people to go ahead and engage in a premium model to their new platforms. I mean, now the talk is about, well, Peacock already has an ad-free version that's $5 and then a $10 premium version. But again, is it worth spending the money on that platform? Right? Because how much content's really on there? The same thing for Paramount Plus. Same thing for Disney Plus. I mean, you got to think about, who's going to be the companies that people are going to go ahead and invest into. Because, again, if they're not watching television, conventional cable and network television, which, except for live sports, cable and network TV are extremely hurting right now. So unless they're getting their on-demand coverage over to the streaming platforms. But again, I don't know how much of the on-demand stuff right now is available on cable or internet services. Say, like if it's CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, FX, AMC, whatever. If all these platforms are still offering their content. I mean, some of them are because they have apps and you can watch digitally. But again, if they're going to go into their own streaming models and they become subscription models, what happens then? But that's also where, you just got to look at those issues, if advertising is not doing well, and advertising hasn't been doing well for a long time because the content's not good either. The quality of it is bad. It's gotten worse. So who knows what they're going to be able to do. That's what's important about that. And that's one of the things I just thought when I looked at the industry in general, and I said to myself, well, what do you do now? Well, let's go into what happened. Let's chronicle back, going back to March 6th, which is when the first episode I did that I started focusing on the coronavirus. And I started off saying that from Deadline.com, they had reported at the time that there was a coronavirus concern at the box office after No Time to Die moves to November. And remember, Black Widow, F9 were also going to be moving as well. They all did. The global film industry facing a $5 billion loss amid the coronavirus outbreak if it would force the movie theaters to close, which they did on March 13th. And that's where we were there. And then moving along into March 13th, even at that time, I started talking about the news media needing to calm down on coronavirus clickbait. And it didn't matter. And then we saw, a couple weeks later, we already started seeing the issue where streaming media became the solace for coronavirus confinement. And right away, at that time, Nielsen reported how COVID-19 could impact media usage across the U.S. I haven't looked at what the numbers look like in terms of how they completely changed all the quality across the board and how much year-to-year change has happened with television and with other media as well. I mean, if I look at right now across the board, along with the normal year-to-year changes of content, right? Well, the normal year-to-year changes in content because of shows, because, again, we already had an erosion of television anyway. Then the question was, how are we doing with overall the issues of, how many more people were just leaving regular television and regular cable because of what was happening? You got to ask about that too. So if I go ahead and go into the ratings itself, say for NBC television, right, and the numbers, year-to-year changes between 5 and 33% loss year to year. And that's among their largest shows they have. This Is Us, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Law & Order SVU, New Amsterdam, Superstore, Blacklist. All major drops. ABC, I bet you it's even worse. With them, it was between 2% and 38%. That's just major changes right there. If I go to CBS, which of course has the biggest ratings, even they saw some major changes. From there, I could see, except for Bull, which was one of the few shows that actually had very little to no change in audience, and FBI getting an increase in audience, a rare thing, everyone else is pulling between 8% and 35% drop in audience. Yep. And then Fox, we'll go to Fox one more, and in theirs, they're between, this is horrible, 6% for The Simpsons to 42% for Prodigal Son. So again, large increases in audience, and that's probably more than what we normally would expect year to year for network TV because of what's happening. That tells you everything. Moving along, I talked about the movie theaters, the issues about all this going on. There were plans to get the entertainment industry back to work. And again, we had the thought process that maybe things could kind of try to get, worked out if there was a good lockdown to stop the spread, right? We thought maybe by April, by Eastern time, Easter Sunday, maybe things would turn about, but obviously did not. And then it took until May to start seeing the real changes. When we started seeing the movie theaters, okay, they were not coming back anytime soon. It was going to be an extended period out. And with that said, the first shot across the bow was May 1st, 2020, when I reported on it, episode 120, that AMC theaters would not be playing Universal movies Trolls World Tour, because that was one of the first major flicks that decided not to go ahead and run its normal run in movie theaters and not delay. They said, no, we're going to go ahead and just pull away. We're just going to say, hey, you know what? We're just going to put it to video. Amazon Prime. Charge, and that's it. And that started becoming the trend that we have today, where a lot of we have a lot of things where movies ultimately, it's been amazing. I have not talked about movies at all because there's nothing really to be said. Nothing, no box office numbers, no nothing. It's just nothing there. And where we are is all these media companies said, well, we can't go to the movie theaters right now. They're losing another revenue stream because they would be able to make significant revenue if everything was in place for them to go and have movies, but they can't. No way to do anything like that. If you look at the numbers, and I haven't looked at, the overall numbers for how things are looking now for the movie theaters because of what happened. But obviously, the box office has not recovered at all. If you look at the box office number now, like just even now as I look at it today, we have some movie theaters that are back, and I think some that are at full capacity once again. But again, the level of movie theaters, here's what we had. Remember, back before, when we had movies out there, right? When we had, full-scale movie theaters, everybody can go to packed movie houses all they want. It would be up to over 4,000 movie screens. Or 4,000 theaters, excuse me. Now, the most we have is 2,500. And here's what we have so far. So Tom and Jerry, okay, that's a movie that just came out from Warner Brothers. They put it on HBO Max and simultaneously put it on the theaters. Almost $23 million gross. That's it. And I don't know what they've made in terms of international, but it's probably not much more. Well, 34 million, 57 million worldwide. But I imagine that would be a whole lot more. That probably would have been $250 million in a normal sense. Other than that, let's look at what else we got. Wonder Woman 1984, which did get released Christmas Day to theaters and to HBO Max. That movie so far, $44 million. That's domestic. And if you put the international, $143 million, so it's gotten almost $200 million. Probably would have made $500 million. Wonder Woman 1984. Most likely. Still pretty good to be able to get that kind of number. But again, I don't know how much it was for them in terms of the financials. I forget how much the budget for that movie was. But that's where they were. And it's amazing they were able to do what they were able to do. That's another one. What else do I have here? There's other movies that have come out, but again, nobody's really made any real money. The Croods: A New Age, that's a movie that went out to theaters. It's been out 15 weeks, $53 million. Other than that, again, a lot of movies have continued to be delayed and delayed and delayed. That's just the way it is. And if you look at the release schedule, we have some movies that are coming out, but very few movies are coming out wide release. Like I'm looking right now, in March, a couple of random movies are out. Godzilla vs. Kong is still scheduled to go and come out March 31st. But again, that's a Warner Brothers movie that will be put on HBO Max. And a couple of random movies will be also put out in April. But again, so many major box office movies are not going to the theaters. And when you go to the theaters, it's such a light amount of movies to choose from in the first place. So movies get a longer time of being held over because what else can they do? At the moment, Black Widow is still scheduled for May 7th. That's one of the first movies that should be one of the first Marvel movies that's coming back. And that's supposed to do something really big. In June, The Conjuring. F9 still scheduled for June 25th. Top Gun still scheduled for July 2nd. We're only getting movie theaters back open now in New York. And Los Angeles has still not said they're opening up yet. But New York will be 25% capacity. Forever Purge, Cinderella, Hotel Transylvania 4, The Suicide Squad, Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Then in the summertime, the movie theaters expect to start getting back to some things. And then you're starting to see a number of movies make their way back out into the theaters once again. And most likely, there are those that believe that by October, most people there'll be a good amount of people that will be vaccinated, and we'll probably get back to some point where more places will be opened up for entertainment at that point. Most likely still with masks on and still doing the hygienic, social distancing, most likely. In my opinion, I don't know if this doesn't go away at the end of the year, or if people just continue to do it because they're just so accustomed to it. It's just become habitual now. And then more movies will start coming out, and then maybe we'll see what happens. But again, there's also so many movies that were scheduled into last year or this year, and we don't know when they're going to be scheduled, where that's all going to come about. There's no idea of that. Moving along. Then we talked about Quibi. Because of the pandemic, if there was even a chance for Quibi to be able to go ahead and make it somewhere, it didn't. It just got destroyed. Just went away. One of the few things that actually changed up that really, somebody that really benefited, well, not during the pandemic, but just as a result, Joe Rogan's $100 million podcast move to Spotify happened in May. And that really created a whole lot of things about podcasting and really put podcasting on the map and said, hey, more celebrities than ever started getting paid more to do podcasts. And then some of them said, okay, we're going to launch podcasts. And I believe, what was it, like an 800% increase in podcasts were created during the pandemic. A ridiculous number of podcasts being launched and produced. Were those somebody podcasts any good? Probably not. I mean, again, it's the fact that, there might be some deals that will be made because some celebrities are going to get paid for it, but if the content's going to be good, well, no, because it's not scripted. They're not doing it in front of a camera. Like, it's taking away all their, the attributes they have that made them a star in the first place. Celebrities need to be on a camera, in front of a camera, and scripted. They just can't do this on their own and become, naturally good. It's just not everybody can do that. It's not possible. So that happened. And then, of course, the pandemic still was an important thing, but of course, it was getting overshadowed by election news and by social and racial inequities and, all the issues that were going with performative allies, Black Lives Matter, and all the changes that were going on. We saw all of that happening as well. And certain companies did try to offer relief for certain companies and things like that. And again, throughout when I was doing this show, we kept talking about how, the movie theaters ultimately being shuttered all this time, never knowing when they were going to be coming back. I mean, it's been weird for me to go and not go to movies because I was used to going every Friday night without delay. And again, I only went to go once after the pandemic started for Tenet, and that was it. After that, there was no other movies to go see because my theater was only open for a month. And there are theaters open now, but I haven't bothered to go because I'm waiting for Regal to come back, and Regal will come back when LA opens up. When they're able to go and have movie theaters open nationwide, which makes sense. I can understand why they're doing that. And then in November, as we're getting to the end of the year, the plan had to be, okay, what's going to happen next? So Disney and Marvel decided to go ahead and make moves to get their movies on the streaming because they were able to do it. And did it piss off the movie exhibitors? Absolutely. You betcha. What else could they do? Like, I understand it. They're roughly more than 6 months into this, going into the new year, and they're thinking, well, we're in the fourth quarter right now. We need to get 2021 in order. What are we going to do? We just can't keep sitting back and holding bags on these movies that we have. We have to release them. We have no choice. We already spent the money on it. We have to make our money back. So for Disney and Marvel and for Warner Brothers to do what they did, I understand why. I totally get it. So they chose to go this route. Then I also talked about the end of November when the new fall season finally did come out. All the COVID stories on network TV. Everybody wearing masks and reminding people of the pandemic. When what people really wanted to do was to be able to go ahead and enjoy watching television and not think about it and get an escape for what was going on. So ultimately, we've seen the ratings go down, when the fact of the matter is, people don't want to watch what's been going on outside their doors. They want a complete escape. They want to be disassociated with what's going on in real life. They want to have an escapism. And network and cable television in some cases said, well, we're just going to keep people kind of locked in the whole thought process that they can still do that. And that's a major mistake. And I'm sure many of these media companies are going to learn from that. They're going to realize it. And then by the end of the year, we saw where all these corporate companies said, we're going to make some major changes and we're going to jump right in. That was what the start of the year became. We saw the changes being made on the holidays, consolidation, some changing of who was running executive positions here and there, layoffs, furloughs, everything you could imagine. It all happened in one shot. And now we are where we are today. And for what it's worth, it's still interesting to be able to go and talk about everything we've been talking about when, again, we haven't had any movies to talk about. Like, I mean, my content has been mostly streaming. It's mostly about digital. And nothing more. I mean, because we haven't had movies to talk about. The strikes, the issues with the movie studios, the agencies, and the whole breakup of that, and the digital disruption also ultimately changed that whole setup because the labor unions have not completely gotten themselves back up. When you had the agencies that also broke up more or less, new agencies getting started, the writers and others freelancing themselves, like it was just ultimately a lot of changes in Hollywood. Hollywood is broken. A lot of things in Hollywood have been broken. The old guard's done. And right now, again, this is where the stirring up of diversity, equity, inclusion comments are coming up. Sure. And that's fine to bring that up. Again, merit-based, I'm totally supportive of it. But right now, all these companies, these labor unions, everything in Hollywood right now needs to reconfigure and come back in some form. Now, again, that we're seeing that Hollywood's going to start trying to reopen back up. Go back to full production, start getting everything out there because people are getting vaccinated. The vaccinations were now, 10% of the public in the U.S. have been vaccinated. So we're getting somewhere. And if numbers are going down, less infections, less deaths, then people are going to start saying, okay, we need to get back to business. And even for them, trying to readjust in the new climate is going to be tough for them. Plus, we know that where the content's being put, I mean, the kind of money that can be asked for by actors and actresses must be a little bit different because in the movies right now, you know, some of these companies are not going to be able to make the kind of money that we're making before. Like, you know, again, at one point I thought people would be a little bit hesitant to go back to the movie theaters, but not by much. At this point, I think it's still going to be a while. Once the movie theaters come back open, I mean, we're going to get people going back. But again, the movies have to come back. It's not so much, and this is what happens. With the movie theaters, I think it would have been, if there was a chance to bring the movie theaters back when it did in September, only if they kept the movies that were scheduled to go and run could it have survived. But all of Hollywood, no, we're going to hesitate. We're going to buckle. We need to put our stuff on streaming, or we're going to hold our movies back another year. That's what they chose to do. They caved. They said, no, we're out. And that's what made the movie theaters suffer. But again, the only way that these movie theaters get back open is they have to have movies to watch, new movies to watch. They're not going to go back and watch old movies. It's already been proven. They have to have something to do. They have to have new movies to run. And honestly, once new movies start coming back, and I have a plethora of movies that are available to watch widescreen release on a regular basis, is when I come back. But again, for new movies to come out, it's been tough to watch them on television here. Like, I don't like it. Plus, I can tell that the good movies are being held back in the first place. Like, the ones that are going to make a whole lot of money, they're still holding back. Now, this is not to go and say anything about the little things. The littlest things, the Denzel Washington, Jared Leto feature, or Judas and the Black Messiah, or Coming to America. But I can tell now why those movies, they were probably not going to make a whole lot of money, especially in the start of the year. It wasn't worth it for them to go and put it out in front of theaters and not make the kind of money they were going to make. Because, again, only certain features that they just couldn't. There was just a timetable. They had to put it out. And for Wonder Woman, I think that the studios, they were doing a solid for the movie theaters to get people to come back to the theater. So that's why Wonder Woman came out. And only so much could be done. But it did make some money. Not even close to what it could make, but at least it did probably, eventually it'll probably make back its money, but it's not going to make the kind of profit it could have. So there are going to be some loss leaders as a result. And the movie theaters are going to still be, I mean, to get the kind of crowds to come back to that, it's going to be one thing. As for the concerts and the music, there's still no plan of that. And again, because of the size of the venues and the size of the crowds. I mean, it's that the concerts are going to take a while to get back. Because that's going to be the one thing that'll be the biggest part. Sporting events, you know, we're starting to see more of it. But I think concerts, because they're not set. I mean, sometimes you get general admission and sometimes you have certain seating. But are we going to continue to have the social distancing throughout, or are we going to get it where people are going to be able to get closer together? And they might not even want to. So we might have limited capacity for a while until we get back somewhere. But again, until there's a significant amount of vaccination, I mean, concerts can't really come back like they were before either, or festivals for that matter. That would be tough. So there's that. And then Broadway, of course, in the same vein, might not see it until next year, most likely. And we talked about that. I talked about with Lauren Collin from the Red Carpet Rendezvous podcast, which I also put that episode full interview up. I got that coming up pretty soon. By the way, those full interviews, the most recent ones, they're starting to release now. I put them out every Wednesday, I believe, on the YouTube channel, King of Podcasts YouTube channel. So you can look for that there. It's also in the description. If you want to look for the link, you can actually find some of the past episodes there. And I have right now some that are scheduled on Wednesdays from now until April, the end of April at this moment. And that's where I'm at. I have a few other stories I want to get to before we can wrap things up on the show. One story was from RadioWorld.com. Of course, the radio industry I got to talk about. And then I'll get into music after this. And it is about where radio can go from here. I'm going to be doing an episode of When I'm Not Podcasting very soon where I'm going to be talking about radio. Specifically about the fact that radio's become, I mean, when you look at what streaming media does and the music that we have available on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, YouTube Music, Apple Music, and the like, that's like high-end boutique designer kind of stores. When radio is comparable to the flea market. It's a secondary market. That's what they are. And that's how they handle things. And it's as if they like being that. So I hadn't talked about this story yet, but I figured I'd bring it up now. From Donna Halper. Talking about the younger listeners, because this lady is a professor at Lesley University, asking her students how many of them listen to radio, and fewer hands, she says, every semester go up. She says that among those who listen, they mostly say it's when they're in the car with their parents. The majority say they prefer to listen to Spotify or Pandora, where they can get only the songs they want with no commercials. Radio is not relevant to their lives, and some tell me it probably won't be around much longer. So at this moment, radio's always had its time where there was a thought of near extinction. Same thought of 2010, where broadcasters were feeling the rising effects of social media. And we go into 2021. She spoke with consultants, owners, programmers, and journalists, asking what they thought the future of broadcasting might hold. One is lack of attention. Among the biggest worries is that radio is indeed losing its younger demographics. Teens and young adults are no longer fans of radio as previous generations were. Nielsen audio ratings bear this out. In 2014, there was an analysis by Edison Research, and I think they're Infinite Dial Research, a steady decline in ratings for contemporary hit radio stations, top 40, which I've talked about. There are no top 40 radio stations with a number one rating in their market. Not at all. Plus a decline in time spent listening. And the only formats that have maintained some young adult listeners are classic hits and classic rock. Consultant Fred Jacobs talked about this being not a surprise. Quote, the radio industry hasn't cared about young people, especially teens, for years. And because of that lack of attention, he fears that radio is going the way of jazz, an artifact of an older generation. And this is the long-standing focus of the industry, by the radio industry, for 25 to 54-year-olds, excluding anyone younger. A veteran consultant, Holland Cook, concurs, quote, today, the real money demo is baby boomers who grew up with the FM-AM habit. Engineering consultant Scott Feibush says FMs are doing much better than AMs. Many boomers have fond memory of AM Top 40, but these days, a few heritage AM stations thrive. A growing number are dependent on syndicated programs or going silent. One CEO and president of Galaxy Media, which owns 13 stations in central New York, said this, and I've talked about this for many years, the 1996 Telecommunications Act as an important inflection point. Quote, the challenge that our industry faces is that for the last 25 years, radio has become bent to the will of a very small group of people. They wanted it bigger and bigger, ostensibly to do better and increase radio's share of the ad spend. In reality, it was simply to get richer, much richer. And while a handful of media companies were buying up more stations, financing them with private equity money, a small number of corporate CEOs became very wealthy. But local stations began encountering problems, largely driven by private equity investment. Radio was given revenue and cash flow goals that were impossible to meet. So when the revenue goals were not met, the only other way to increase cash flow was to cut people local. You also, they'll talk about here from Jerry DiColiano, publisher of Inside Music Media, saying that ongoing layoffs may have helped the corporate bottom line, but many talented local broadcasters lost their jobs. He's also critical of the FCC for allowing so much deregulation that companies are no longer required to maintain a local presence in their city of license. Radio itself isn't the problem, he says. It's what these giant owners did to it. Again, corporate. And that goes across the media spectrum, which is why I always talk about radio, because radio is an indicative of where the rest of the industry could follow. Except for the fact they don't have private equity money. But when they start losing the kind of revenue they used to get, they're going to need private equity money, because that's what happens. And then the vultures come in. They also talk about changing digital habits. With so many local events canceled because of COVID, station managers have found that their website often serves as a gathering place where listeners can find up-to-the-minute information about a news story, listen to a podcast, replay a feature they might have missed on, or interact with the personalities. But again, it's digital. And also, these radio stations all have online streams. But are they getting the kind of attention there? No. But again, you could get people to go ahead and adapt to listening to their stations online. I mean, I still do a couple of stations I'll listen to online. But again, it's the commercial load that is really over the top and bad and unlistenable. Scott Feibush mentioned that broadcasters trying to adapt to new digital realities, but not fast enough or with enough innovation. He said that with more people working from home, the old idea of programming mainly to people in the office needs to be revisited, as well as rethinking traditional day parts. Are people who now work or study at home getting up early to listen to a morning show example? And what about other day parts? Right. Almost nobody is paying attention to weekends, even though there's been a spike in usage then. In a post-media consolidation era, as money-losing corporations divest from various properties, Del Coliano predicts there will be new opportunities for local ownership. And I've talked about this for a long time. An implosion by all these corporate companies to let go of these stations because they can't hold on to them anymore. They've made all the money they can make off of them. And eventually they're going to have to unload them off of their coffers. Quote, local operators may be the salvation of radio. After the giant conglomerate owners are gone, the small owners who remain will be able to reinvent the industry. Holland Cook actually says, quote, give listeners actionable information like where they can get a vaccine, get an expert with tips for keeping their pets safe and healthy. Ed Levine says, quote, radio suffers from a perception problem. We've got an inferiority complex. People may not listen for as long as they used to, but the listeners are still there. And one other person, Elroy Smith, writes, quote, the story about the demise of radio is false. He said, when it's done well, radio can still speak to today's audience. In fact, he says radio can be a breath of fresh air. It's not off. That's why I continue to keep coming up here, where radio is such a simple format, and it's such one of the easiest ways to entertain an audience. Music, talk, and, some information, and you just find the easiest way to let somebody listen to you. In the same way podcasting is so popular, that's why radio became so popular, because podcasting is an extension of radio. Now, I'm not going to speak for what Bob Pittman says about radio being podcasting's birthright. No. Or podcasting being radio's birthright. No. I mean, radio is ultimately where podcasting came from. The idea of it is radio on demand. But obviously podcasting, and for those podcasters that are very popular, they're not doing a regular radio format. They're doing something different. And originally, maybe with some of the earlier podcasters like myself, we did it like radio. But we've all ultimately had to change and evolve. Because even the way I do this program and others has changed as well. Because I have to figure out what the audience wants to listen to. But in the same time, I want to talk about what I want to talk about. Now, of course, this audience isn't the biggest in the world. I understand that. And I'm not worried about the fact that I don't get a big audience for the Broadcasters Podcast. It's very niche. But I love doing it. And it makes up my Thursday night. And I look forward to talking about different things here on the program on a regular basis. And I love it. And I'm going to continue to keep doing it because it's a passion project. I get so much enjoyment out of doing this. But I really do love all of you that do listen to this program and check it out. And I hope you'll let other people, let them know that they can also follow along and listen to the show, and let them know where to go and find it so they can listen to them themselves. Go listen to back episodes, all of that. And I hope you'll consider that. Couple other quick stories I want to bring up before we go and wrap things up. The ex-global head of music publishing at Spotify thinks streaming services should pay songwriters more money. Adam Parnas, he's revealed the service that was appealing a 44% pay rise for songwriters and music publishers from streaming in the United States. He says, quote, "The sounds we hear come from songs that pour out of the hearts and minds of songwriters. And streaming services should be contributing more revenue to songwriters and independent music publishers." He also says that the value of songwriters and publishers' intellectual property in the streaming ecosystem should be measured by the very real contributions made to the platform's success, and that songwriters and music publishers should not be treated as a drag on your margin. He also says the digital music ecosystem simply does not work if we can't sustain licensing models and royalty rates that make everything else feasible. We need to work collaboratively towards a common and better understanding with streaming services concerning the very real and measurable values that songwriters and independent publishers bring to streaming platforms. So that's what he says right there. Another story that I got is from Rolling Stone, the black market where artists can pay for millions of streams. So the rigging of the streams on the charts. Interesting story here from Rolling Stone. John Phelan, Director General of the International Confederation of Music Publishers, streaming manipulation has been an unfortunate blight on the industry over the past few years. That there has been an issue about streaming manipulation, a practice that inflates artists' numbers on platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and potentially reduces payouts for smaller acts. And there was a code of conduct that was being signed by artists to avoid that, and for other companies as well. And the code of conduct was signed various members of the Blueprint Group, a high-powered management and distribution company that works with multiple Grammy-winning artists, hopped on a conference call with a digital marketer named Joshua Mack, according to an audio recording retained by Rolling Stone. Two of the CEOs, G. Robertson and G. Nelson, the head of digital strategy, Brian Calhoun, the chief marketing officer, Branch, they explored options for boosting an upcoming release from rapper G-Eazy, an artist they wanted to say, "I want this to be big," one of G-Eazy's team says on the call. Mac tells Blueprint he can jack up artist streams for a price. A salesman operating in an industry that treats hype as standard operating procedure. Mac claims to Blueprint that his network can generate 200 million streams a month, spread across its various music clients, a group he alleges has included nearly a dozen known well-known acts and prominent labels. The recording offers a rare glimpse into the shadowy world of third-party companies in the music industry attempting to seduce artists, managers, or labels by promising to manufacture millions of streams. Mac freely admits to Blueprint that Spotify has punished him for his stream-boosting activities in the past, but he claims that artists continue to use his services anyway. Why? because we basically cracked the code, he says, and understand how to manipulate the system and hit astronomical numbers. Also, one A&R at a prominent label says, quote, "We agree to a certain amount of money for a certain amount of streams. We're good. We just need performance-enhancing steroids to be a little bit better." If radio got its act together, this wouldn't be necessary. But, again, radio only helps so much because radio doesn't generate music sales. They don't generate music units being sold. Streaming does. But this is where we are. I mean, what is radio going to do? Are they going to promote artists and say, go look for their album on Spotify, their competitor? Probably not, unless there's a way to do it. But that's where we are. Unless the record labels are spending time on it and saying, go listen to the album on Spotify. I guess they can do that. What else can they do? There's a whole lot more to that story, but I'll leave it there. Again, I'll go ahead and put it in there so everybody can check it out for themselves. I'll leave that for you to check that out. And then one other story that's also getting some play, non-fungible tokens. I have not talked about this yet, but I know there's a lot of talk from Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z looking to go ahead and put non-fungible tokens into the atmosphere. So let me get that story up for you. In that, NFT is a one-of-a-kind cryptographic token that exists on a blockchain, typically Ethereum, second most popular cryptocurrency after Bitcoin. So what's happening is this. NFTs have been traded online since 2017. They've captured the interest in the music business over the last few months. In December, deadmau5 announced he would sell virtual stickers and trading cards with animations of his iconic mouse helmet. After selling an audiovisual collaboration with augmented reality artist Sutu, depicting a golden version of deadmau5's helmet floating in a space station on the moon Titan and a 30-second loop, deadmau5 teamed with digital artist Mad Dog Jones on another NFT auction, showing the benefits of a royalty on third-party sales. With Mad Dog Jones, we did $420,000 in 15 minutes. 2 weeks later, Mad Dog Jones does his own drop, clears $4.2 million. In the same week, for our art that we did with him, we got a loan, paid $22,000 in the secondary market. There's more stories like that, but again, artists are looking at NFTs now. So the word is that it's a collectibles business. What is being seen as a hype moment, like when .com businesses boomed and then busted, there will be a boom where everybody thinks there's a gold rush and there's free money out there, and then the collectibles businesses will come out the back of this hype, taking the baseball card mentality of collectibles into the digital space. So there we go. Whatever they can do to make money, right? Very important. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That's it for the show this week. Thank you for listening in. And again, thanks for listening out throughout this whole pandemic. And again, what's going to happen to this podcast, we'll continue to go and see what comes back in terms of returning back to some kind of new normalcy in the media industry in various ways. We'll keep an eye on it here for you right here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.